So hello everyone, welcome to our webinar on everything you ever wanted to know about surrogacy. Thank you all for joining us today. I am Erin and I am the Director of Operations at Worldwide. My role here at Worldwide consists of making sure that the surrogate and the intended parent onboarding process, along with our internal operations, are as efficient as possible. I work alongside the rest of our team here at Worldwide to ensure that our process is as warm, welcoming, and efficient as possible. So before we begin, I would like to cover a few housekeeping items. Everyone will be muted for the duration of the session, and you will be able to then hear us, but we will not be able to hear you. At the end of the webinar, we will be wrapping up with a live Q&A session. So any questions you have throughout the duration of the webinar, you can submit to us via the chat window within GoToMeeting. And lastly, please keep an eye out for an email from us that will contain follow-up resources for you to review, along with a brief survey about today's session. So just to kind of give you a brief overview about our agency, Worldwide Surrogacy Specialists, we are a full-service surrogacy matching agency founded by leading reproductive lawyer Victoria Ferrara. We are dedicated to supporting all intended parents, and Victoria actually forged a path for legal parentage in Connecticut through the historic Supreme Court case of Raftopol versus Ramey. This landmark decision ruled that an intended parent could assume all rights to a child through a gestational carrier agreement, regardless of genetic connection to the child born to the surrogate. Along with Victoria, our compassionate team of case managers, social workers, and clinical psychologists have over a decade of experience helping intended parents across the globe build their families through gestational surrogacy. So now that we've shared a bit about who we are as an agency, I would like to introduce you to who our presenters will be for today's webinar. Starting off on the left, and as I mentioned previously, Vicki Ferrara is our founder and legal director. She brings over 30 years of experience practicing assisted reproductive technology law in addition to surrogacy law. Vicki is most involved in meeting with new prospective intended parents and giving them expert insight and one-on-one attention as they consider gestational surrogacy. As you can imagine, it is important that intended parents have a knowledgeable legal advisor to help them navigate throughout all aspects of their journey. Therefore, Vicki stands as a legal advisor for the intended parents and will advise and guide them through every step of the way. Pictured here in the middle, we have Serena, who is our Vice President and Director of Surrogate Services. As a two-time surrogate, Serena provides a more personal perspective to surrogates, having gone through this process herself. Serena works with all of Worldwide's carriers starting from when they are officially matched with intended parents through the delivery day and beyond. On the right-hand side, we have Jen, who is the Director of Case Management here at Worldwide, and Jen provides direct support and guidance to all of our intended parents from the time they decide to sign on with our agency all the way through the birth. In addition to her role as the point person for intended parents, Jen is also a social worker. Jen's unique background and experience, coupled with her passion for surrogacy, help her to make the journey for intended parents as seamless as possible. So before we dive in and before I turn it over to our presenters, let's take a quick look at today's agenda and what we will be covering during today's webinar. Very often, we're asked the following questions listed here on the slide, such as what is surrogacy, what are some of the costs involved for intended parents, and how can I start my surrogacy journey? Our hope is that we can provide you with more insight and information as to how to answer some of these questions throughout the webinar. So with that being said, let's get started with our first topic.
Hi everyone, I'm Vicki. I'm going to just briefly say to you what is surrogacy, and some of you know, but surrogacy is when a woman carries a baby for another couple or individual. And there are two types of surrogacy, gestational surrogacy and traditional surrogacy. Here at Worldwide, we focus on gestational surrogacy, and that is when the embryo is created from the egg and sperm of the intended parents or from the sperm or egg of the intended parents and a donor egg or sperm, and the surrogate carries an embryo or a baby that is not genetically related to her, so it is not her egg. In traditional surrogacy, the surrogate carries a baby that is her own genetic baby. That was done many years ago when the medical technology wasn't as evolved as it is today. So here at Worldwide, again, we do gestational surrogacy. Surrogacy is a process that is done in a medical clinic, an in vitro reproductive clinic. And the process of in vitro fertilization is used to make the embryos from the egg and sperm that are chosen by the intended parents, or if it's their own egg and sperm. And once the embryos are created, the gestational surrogate will go to the medical clinic and undergo an embryo transfer to become pregnant with the embryo created by the intended parents. Surrogacy is legal in many states in the United States. There really are just a few where we don't have surrogacy that is permissible. One of those states is New York, another Louisiana, but laws are evolving and changing, and there are many states that are available for surrogacy. It's important in surrogacy to have a competent team of professionals and a lawyer, because it is a complex way to have a baby, and there should be a good professional team to help you.
So now that we've kind of discussed what surrogacy is and some of the differences between gestational surrogacy and traditional surrogacy, at this point we're going to be talking about who exactly is qualified to take the surrogacy journey. Vicki will start us off by discussing some of the qualifications for intended parents, and shortly after, Serena will discuss some of the qualifications for surrogates.
So really almost anyone can turn to surrogacy to build their families. We often have couples who have struggled with infertility, women who have had medical conditions such as cancer, and gay male couples. And we've also had single intended fathers and single intended mothers. So if you are in any one of those categories, we would invite you to give us a call and see how we might be able to discuss your unique circumstances with us. We, of course, accept parents of every race, gender, sexual orientation. That none of those things are questions for us. We also have many parents from all over the world. We have many couples from Europe, many and single parents from Europe, and many couples and single parents from the U.S. Last year, we had 97 babies born to families through surrogacy, so we are a busy, thriving agency. We have a full team of people here to help our parents, and we have had babies for families in over 30 countries throughout the world. I'm going to turn it over to Serena, who will tell you a little bit more about who our surrogates are.
Now that Vicki has talked a bit about who our IPs are, I'll discuss a bit about our surrogate requirements. There are very specific requirements set by the clinics that we work with, and a carrier needs to meet them before she can pursue surrogacy. Some of the preliminary requirements are she must be between the ages of 21 and 40, must be a U.S. citizen or hold a permanent green card, must live in a surrogate-friendly state, has delivered at least one child, and be a non-smoker, non-drug user, and is currently not on any antidepressant or anti-anxiety medication.
And before we get into more details about the process and the journey, again, it's Vicki here. I just wanted to tell you just briefly a little bit more about Worldwide Surrogacy. We're an agency. We've been in existence for about 14 years now. We have a full team of people here in Fairfield, Connecticut. We also have an office in New York, and we can meet with parents through any one of our offices or by Skype or phone to let you know more about our agency and our program as it could relate to you. We have an amazing team here. We have a dedicated full team of people who are really passionate about helping others to have their children and about supporting the amazing women who become surrogates. And that is something that I just really want everyone to know, that what we bring to the table is a true dedication and a true awareness that this is not just a business or a transactional matter. This is what we're doing is helping people have babies and have children through surrogacy. So we take that very seriously, and we honor what your needs are in this very important time in your lives.
So now that Vicki has touched upon what the surrogacy process looks like with Worldwide and what we pride ourselves on, we're now going to take a look at what the surrogacy journey looks like from the surrogate's perspective.
The surrogate process consists of 7 main steps. We'll first start with a pre-screen application, and this is to see if the surrogate will meet the preliminary requirements as we discussed earlier. If the carrier passes this step, next there will be a full application. This includes background information such as personal and medical history. There will be additional documentation collected, which will include recent photos of herself and her home, insurance cards, and a valid driver's license. Each potential surrogate then undergoes a psychological evaluation and background check. If she is married or has a live-in partner, that spouse or partner will need to participate in both the psychological evaluation and background check, as well as a home check. Each surrogate also must provide her pregnancy medical records for approval by a reproductive physician. This review will be coordinated by our agency. After the screening is successfully completed, then comes one of the most exciting parts of the surrogacy process, which is finding your match. We propose a match based on information we received from both surrogates and parents. If a match is proposed that everyone likes, then the parents and surrogate will meet in person if they are local, or by video call. A final step of the process before trying to get pregnant is entering into a surrogacy agreement. This is the agreement or the contract between the surrogate and the intended parents. Everyone will have their own lawyers for this process. Surrogacy is a complex process and is a simplified overview. If you have any questions about a specific part of this process, please let us know during the live Q&A at the end of this presentation, or you can contact us for a free consultation at any time after this webinar.
So now that we've discussed what the process looks like for surrogates, Jen will be going into further detail as to what the surrogacy journey looks like from the intended parent's perspective.
Hi everyone, this is Jen. So a bit of an overview how intended parents process goes is to sign up with Worldwide, you're going to provide us with a questionnaire. You're going to complete the comprehensive retainer agreement, and then you would make the first payment, agency fee of payment of $13,000. At this time, you'll get on our matching list, and we will start the surrogate search right away for you. At some point, while we're searching for a surrogate for you, you're going to choose a fertility clinic. You may have already chosen a fertility clinic. Sometimes people come to us with one or without one, but during that time, you're going to start working on that as well. Shortly after signing on with us, you're going to have an informational session with one of our social workers, and she's going to go over a checklist with you, just some things to remind you of what you may be thinking about during the journey, some things you may not have realized about surrogacy. So she's going to go over that stuff with you and make sure you're all aware of what goes into the process. Within a few months really of that social work interview, we're going to start showing you surrogate profiles. We send a profile with pictures of a surrogate that we've handpicked for you based on your questionnaire and what your requirements are. And then you're going to select your surrogate through one of these profiles, believe it or not. Next, if you like a profile and the surrogate's pictures and she likes yours, the way you're going to meet is either in person, Skype, or FaceTime, some kind of a video chat. And you're going to really get to know her, believe it or not, over that video chat. Sometimes these calls can be, an hour long. And after that, you're going to let us know if you want to move forward with her or not. And she's going to let us know if you want to move forward or not with her as well, with you as well. So at that point, if you all decide that you want to work together, we confirm it with everyone, and there's a formal match. So after that point, the next thing that comes is the contracts. and we will draft an initial contract for you. Vicki will do that, and then it's going to be sent to you for that initial review and approval. Sometimes there's some negotiations going back and forth with the contract. It'll go back to the surrogate's attorney as well. Once the contract is all agreed upon and signed, the parents or you are going to fund an escrow account with us. It's kind of like a bank account that holds a large sum of money that we're going to keep, and we're going to pay out the surrogate during her pregnancy. And we can talk a little bit more about the escrow account in the questions. Once the contract's all signed, legal clearance is going to be given to the clinic. That's going to let the clinic know that your contracts are done and that they can start the medical piece with your surrogate. Once that legal clearance is given, the clinic is going to reach out directly to the gestational carrier and schedule a screening appointment with her. And that is going to include some blood work, some other things, and from all of that, they're going to create a medical calendar for the surrogate and for you. And this is going to lead to the transfer. So you're going to have a calendar that's going to show you when the transfer date is going to be. Okay. So after the embryo transfer, Worldwide is going to support you and the surrogate until the birth. We have a lot of contact with our intended parents. We're here for questions, and we're open to talk, Skype, anytime about anything that's going on with the surrogacy. During the pregnancy, one of the important things is midway through the pregnancy, we're going to make sure that the legal parentage work gets done, so you as the parents are the legal parents at the time of the birth. And then our team notifies the hospital that this is going to be a surrogacy birth. And one of the most important things that we tell intended parents is to arrange a tour of the hospital where the surrogate's going to be delivering. It's very important. It's very eye-opening. You'll learn a lot of information about the tour. A lot of questions will be answered for you, during that tour.
So now that we know what the process looks like for both intended parents and surrogates, we're now going to be providing you with a high-level overview of surrogate compensation.
Worldwide offers a package of compensation to our surrogates that is a comprehensive and a standard in surrogacy today in the United States. Depending on certain factors, base compensation can range from $35,000 to $55,000. We also offer additional compensation and as-needed compensation to help support you through your journey. Examples of the additional compensation are travel and legal expenses, maternity clothes, a monthly allowance, and lost wages, just to name a few. Please make sure and review our website for more details or set up a consultation with us if you'd like further information.
So now that we've discussed and touched upon some of the aspects of surrogate compensation, Vicki will be going into further detail about some of the costs involved for intended parents.
So just to back up for a minute, we've used some terms interchangeably. Gestational carrier is the same as gestational surrogate, is the same as surrogate. In our world of surrogacy, we have a lot of terms that we use, and certainly if there's been any question about any of the terms that we use, you should let us know in the question and answer period. For example, we also use the term IPs, and that stands for intended parents. Sometimes we use the term GCs, and that stands for gestational carriers. So just a little bit of overview of our lingo. So cost for IPs. This is one of the most difficult topics to talk about because, unfortunately, it is very expensive. And that is the one drawback I always say to prospective intended parents. In so many ways, we can make surrogacy journeys really wonderful, and we can minimize greatly legal risk, and we can minimize complications in terms of communication and travel and court processes. But the one thing that people do have to face is the cost. So I like to say that there's an approximate range that intended parents will find on the surrogacy side of things. So this would not include your medical clinic, the IVF costs, and the egg donor if you're getting a donor. But on the surrogacy side, we would have to think about $100,000 to $120,000. And it breaks down into four main buckets. The first is the agency fee, and Worldwide's agency fee is a flat fee of $26,000. The only thing that you pay up front is the first half of that agency fee, and then you pay nothing more to the agency or to the escrow until you have a surrogate that you're matched with. So approximately 4 to 6 months later, you'll have to be thinking about the next sums of money that are due. Then the second bucket would be the surrogate compensation, and that's the largest amount of that overall total. And what we like to think about with the surrogate compensation is, what is your exposure? So if you looked at your contract with your surrogate, you might add up everything that you could possibly pay, and it could be as much as $65,000, even $70,000, but many of those dollars you won't pay. Because, for example, there are line items for loss of reproductive organs for a surrogate, maybe $4,000 or $8,000, and I don't think I've ever seen that happen except for 2 times out of the many hundreds of contracts that I've worked on. So that is a line item that most likely won't have to be paid. Then there's another line item in the contract for lost wages. Those are capped. So maybe there's a cap of $10,000 for lost wages. But if the pregnancy goes well and the baby is born healthy and the surrogate is fine, then maybe you intended parents only pay $2,000 or $3,000 of lost wages. So again, there are ways to contain the costs, and you may end up only paying $50,000 or $45,000 in total to the surrogate. So, but again, we like to err on the side of caution and see what the total exposure is. Then legal is another bucket, and that's really only going to be about $8,000 to $10,000 for all legal. That would include your gestational surrogacy agreement, your lawyer drafting that. It would include the surrogate, your lawyer to review the contract, and then it would include the legal work for the legal parentage, for the intended parents to become the legal parents of the baby. So that, again, $10,000 or less is what we see. And then the variable, too, is insurance. Why is there such a large range between $100,000 and $120,000? Because we don't know if the surrogate will have insurance. And, of course, you can know about that when you're proposed with a surrogate match, but you have to decide whether you can accept someone who doesn't have insurance, and then insurance costs can range for the total journey from $12,000 to $30,000. So that will be part of the matching criteria. When the matching team presents you with a surrogate, one of the questions will be, does she have insurance? And if not, how do we get it? And if we're going to get it, how much will it cost? So no one here would ever push a surrogate on you without you knowing what the ramifications are in terms of costs and compensation. And that would be one bucket we'd have to look at. Of course, if the surrogate does have insurance, that's a great scenario, but it's not basically free. The surrogate would always actually add more to her compensation because she has the benefit of bringing insurance to the process. Again, those are issues that you'll discuss with your case coordinator, case manager, when you're being matched with a surrogate.
So now that we've covered a lot of the basics about the surrogacy journey, we're going to be diving into some of the most frequently asked questions that we run into.
Okay, hello again, it's Vicki again. So one of the first questions is, who can be an intended parent? And again, as we talked about earlier, almost anyone can become an intended parent. The one drawback, as I said earlier, is the expense. So intended parents have to be able to afford the process. Secondly, there are some age guidelines, and if anyone has a specific question about this, please contact us. It's not an objective qualification. It's something that is looked at according to guidelines. So we discuss everyone's particular case with them in private when that's the issue. How do I find a gestational surrogate? Well, the best way to find a gestational surrogate is by using a surrogacy matching agency. Of course, we at Worldwide Surrogacy, we are a matching agency, so we can help you. There are other agencies that you can look at, but you want to have an agency that has a lawyer on board, I think, and then also that has a good reputation and good experience with following the guidelines in the surrogacy world, such as medical guidelines and screening guidelines, so that you have a surrogate that is a very, very good candidate. One of the reasons to use a surrogacy matching agency is because of the scrutiny that a good agency does in screening the surrogates, and also for legal protection to minimize legal risks. A good professional team is what you're looking for. Also, in terms of the screening, we do in-depth consultations with our surrogate candidates. We get to know, if you're a surrogate, we get to know you. We want to know what's going to work for you. If you're an intended parent, we get to know you, and we want to know what's going to work for you. Then we do background investigations on our surrogates and their husbands. We do insurance reviews on insurance. We do psychological evaluations. Gestational surrogates and their husbands go through psychological evaluation, and parents go through a psychological interview as well. And then we also do home checks, and we have medical reviews by IVF physicians of the surrogate's medical records. In terms of egg donation, if parents need an egg donor, the best place to start would be with the medical clinics, the IVF clinics, because many of them have really great egg donation programs, and I think the clinics do very good screening of their egg donors. There are other egg donation agencies that you can look at that might add to the cost, but certainly that's such an important ingredient in your journey that you need to find the egg donor that will work for you. And there are options, and we will help you and guide you to find those options. Similar with sperm donation, though it's less medically intrusive, there are actually cryo banks where you can look at catalogs of sperm donors and choose a donor from a long list of them. Whose name will appear on the birth certificate? So the intended parents' names will be listed on the birth certificate. That is the goal. During the pregnancy, we will do or supervise or coordinate legal work to make sure that the parents are listed as the legal parents on the birth certificate. Occasionally, we have international couples that would like to have an initial birth certificate with the surrogate mother on it, and that is so that they can satisfy requirements in their home countries. If that is the case, then of course we would discuss this with you, our surrogates, and we would make sure that everybody's on board and knows what the legal process is to accomplish that. Next, do I have a right to information regarding surrogates and egg and sperm donors? Yes, definitely. You are entitled, you, the intended parents, are entitled to so much information about your surrogate and your egg or sperm donors. With surrogates, it would be background information and home life and medical information. With egg and sperm donors, it would include genetic screening, genetic history, many other pieces of information that you would have. And with the surrogate, of course, you're going to have rights to medical information during the entire process. So there'd be an authorization for you to get all of the medical information during the pregnancy, to be present at the medical appointments, to be present at the birth. And there are, in the beginning of the process, there are authorizations put in place to protect the intended parents. And also for the surrogates, they're entitled to information too about the parents. So we want the surrogates to make a decision on who they want to work with, and whenever a match is made, it's a mutually agreed upon match. So possible surrogates out there, you will also be provided with a great deal of information about the parents, so that you can make a decision on who you would like to carry a baby for. Financing options, again, we go back to the one difficulty with surrogacy is the cost, and there are many ways that people have financed their surrogacy journeys. People save, they plan and they save. They also take loans. There are medical lenders. We have one on our website called Prosper Lending. There are other similar medical lenders that you can look up through doing internet research. And sometimes people take loans against their 401ks, and then sometimes people get family to help. So it's difficult, but I've seen many, many people from all walks of life figure out how to have their babies through surrogacy. So if you would like to discuss with us different options and possibilities, we're here to do that with you. And how long does the surrogacy process generally take? Well, if all goes well, approximately a year and a half. The first phase is the matching phase. It's about 4 to 6 months. Depending on your specific requirements, it can be longer or it can be shorter, but that's been where we strive to hit, between 4 and 6 months. And over 90% of our parents are matched in 6 months or less. The second phase would be the medical phase. So from match to embryo transfer is about 3 months. And then hopefully we have a pregnancy, the first or second try, and then you have a 9-month pregnancy, of course, and then you have the baby. So that, again, is a good case scenario. Now, it's important to realize that we cannot control what happens in Mother Nature, and sometimes things happen to make the process longer. So there can be a miscarriage, and we are always here to support you with a miscarriage. It's a devastating loss for everyone. And it can be a financial loss, hopefully not a great one for the parents, and it can be a time delay, which is, besides the emotional loss, can be frustrating. I always say to people, stay on your path, stay true to your vision to have a baby, and navigate the hurdles with our support, and you will have your baby. And now we'll have some questions about ones that we get from surrogates, although I did try to address the surrogates in my last answers, but we will talk a little bit about questions we might get from prospective surrogates. So what expenses are covered during surrogacy? Well, basically almost everything. We don't want our surrogates to go out of pocket for anything, and that is standard in the surrogacy world. So anything from mileage reimbursements to compensation for the pregnancy, to lost wages, to housekeeping, childcare, those will all be itemized in your gestational surrogacy agreement with your parents. We have a proposed package for our surrogates. We do that so there's not a lot of confusion when it comes to contract time. We try to be fair so that the surrogates, you will get what is very common in the surrogacy world now, and the parents are being treated fairly as the contract is in line with what's expected in the surrogacy world. Compensation, Serena touched on it a bit earlier. In your contracts, and you can go to our website and actually see the actual page of itemized compensation, but there are what we call base compensation reimbursements, and the base compensation ranges from $35,000 to $55,000. There are variations on that. Sometimes there are people who carry for people they know and they charge a little less, and then there are some people that ask for a little higher compensation. But in order to have a good match, it should fall within that range and a fair match. And the reasons for the variations are some surrogates are experienced, they've been a surrogate before, they can command a higher base compensation. Some surrogates have insurance, they can command a higher base compensation. Some carriers live in desirable areas. There are some states that are more desirable than others. Sometimes I'm not sure why, but that's been happening, such as Connecticut and California. Surrogates seem to be paid a bit more. So there are reasons, and you can discuss these with us or our matching teams if you have questions about that. Just before I get to the next question, I talked about base compensation, but again, your surrogacy agreement will be very comprehensive and will itemize all the things that you should be reimbursed to make sure that you're whole. Even travel, if you have to travel to the clinic, you'll be paid, reimbursed for travel expenses. You'll have a meal allowance during your travel days, ability to rent a car or pay for ground transportation. So everything should be covered in a fair way. So you're going to travel on economy airfare, and the meal allowance is going to be reasonable because, again, the parents are having to come up with a lot of money to have their baby through surrogacy. So we want to try to achieve fairness for both sides of the equation. Whose name will appear on the birth certificate? Well, every state is different. And the ultimate goal is to have a birth certificate without your name, you the surrogate, without your name on it, and to have a birth certificate with the parents' names, or if it's a single parent, with the single parent alone on the birth certificate. Sometimes, again, as we discussed earlier, there are possible international requirements to have one birth certificate with the surrogate's name and the intended father, that this would be used in their home country to establish citizenship. But there would be a second birth certificate immediately following the first that would take the surrogate's name off and put the two parents on, or the one parent alone on. So we're always protecting the surrogate legally and making sure that she would not have any obligations regarding the baby that she gives birth to. Will I need to undergo medical and psychological assessment? Yes. That is standard practice in surrogacy. There is a medical organization called the American Society for Reproductive Medicine, and they promulgate guidelines for surrogacy journeys. And those guidelines include any party coming to the surrogacy process should be evaluated by a mental health professional. So that would include surrogates and parents. How do I know if I qualify? At Worldwide, we have a pre-screen form that you can go on our website and fill out. Serena earlier told you the initial requirements. If you have more questions on that, you can call us or send a question in now. But the easiest thing to do is just to fill out the pre-screen form, and that will tell you right away whether you qualify to take the next step in the screening.
So as this webinar is just a simple introduction, kind of covering the basics of the surrogacy journey, we have a number of resources that you can explore to gain more of an in-depth knowledge on specific areas of the surrogacy process.
So again, it's Vicki. Boy, they gave me a lot of talking to do on this webinar, but okay, I'll jump in again. No, it's nice to be with everyone, and we really want to thank everyone for joining up with our webinar and participating with us today, and we would love to meet you in person or talk to you in person when you have a chance. But there are a lot of resources that you can get right from our website. We have a blog that has a lot of information. We have resources, what is surrogacy, resources about compensation for surrogates that might be of interest to both surrogates and parents. What to expect during the contract phase. We didn't talk about that too much today. It's a detailed process, entering into a gestational surrogacy agreement, and we have that explained on our website. We also have a dictionary. I talked a little bit about terms, and you can go to our dictionary and learn more about the surrogacy lingo or language. And again, we have a blog, and it's been recognized, and we try really hard to keep posting topics that are of interest to both women who would like to become surrogates, medical professionals, and intended parents, and other mental health professionals, anyone who has a stake in the world of surrogacy.
So in terms of additional resources we would recommend, there's countless other organizations, resources, and agencies that can provide invaluable insight, tools, and support throughout the surrogacy journey. So we will be discussing shortly after this a few that we recommend.
It's me again, Vicki. They just keep wanting me to jump in, so here I am again. You're going to need more than a matching agency if you either want to become a surrogate or you are an intended parent. And we can help you find the resources that you need. So there's going to be medical clinics, possibly egg donation agencies, or maybe you want advice on choosing an egg donor, legal resources. I belong to lawyer organizations where I'm networked throughout the country. So if you need a resource in almost any state of a lawyer, I can help you with that. There are insurance issues. We have insurance brokers that we can help people with, and mental health professionals if people are struggling with the issue of turning to surrogacy. There are good, competent professionals with knowledge of surrogacy who can help in that area. We also go to conferences throughout the world and the country. There's an organization called Men Having Babies, and we participate in many of their conferences throughout the world. They have conferences in Brussels, New York, San Francisco, Texas, Florida. There's one upcoming this weekend in Florida. And they're really wonderful experiences for intended parents. And even though it's men having babies, they're wonderful experiences for straight couples as well, because there's so much information about surrogacy, and for surrogates too, because there's so much information that they provide about surrogacy. And there are other organizations that have conferences. There's a group called Families Through Surrogacy, and there are medical clinics that put on conferences. So you can, we usually know about these conferences, so if you wanted to know, is there a conference coming up, you could call us and we could let you know. And we also post them on our website and through our blog. If you need information or resources, you can call us, look at our website, and we'd be happy to help you with any of this.
So finally, and probably our favorite part of today's webinar, and a question a lot of you are probably asking yourselves, is how do you start your own surrogacy journey?
Hi, this is Serena again. So how do you start? So first, we'll show you how to begin the process if you're interested in becoming a gestational surrogate. As I mentioned a few times throughout the presentation, the best way to begin the process is by filling out our online pre-screen application. It's a quick and simple way to record your basic information to see if you've qualified. Once you've submitted the pre-screen, you will know whether or not you've qualified to become a gestational surrogate. If you meet the basic requirements, you can immediately move on to the full surrogate application. If you're not quite ready to fill out the application right away, you can save your username and password and use those credentials to complete your full application later on.
So now that we've touched on how to start the process for surrogates, Jen will be going into further detail of what the first steps are for intended parents.
Hi, it's Jen again. Well, congratulations. By attending this webinar, you're already taking the first step here. It's great to gather as much information about surrogacy and general by attending conferences, reading up on topics around surrogacy, doing some research online, calling surrogacy agencies and setting up consultations. And then, really to choose your professional team, to build a team of professionals around you that you trust. And the next important thing in the process is to really plan out your finances. This is, as Vicki said, an expensive journey, and to really plan for the money portion of this. And we can talk to you about, in person, specific fees and costs, so there's no surprises for you along the way. So the best way, as I said, is to talk to the experts, and we would be more than happy to have a one-on-one consultation with you, Skype, over the phone, in-person meeting here in New York. It's really a good way to sit down with us and to ask us everything that you've been thinking about. Visit our website. Please, if you want to, complete the contact form to set up a free consultation, and we'll get right back to you. Just submit that form, and we'll get back to you for a consult. Having a private consultation also will just help us better understand your situation, your goals, your timing, where you are in the whole journey, and how we can really start to help you. So essentially, as we went over before, there's 3 steps to begin this process to get on our matching list, and that is completing the IP profile and questionnaire, which we will send you all this information over email. Read and sign the comprehensive retainer agreement, and then make that first agency payment of $13,000. Once you submit that intake questionnaire, you're going to be directed to our portal for intended parents. You'll see all of our resources there, a surrogacy timeline, legal documentation, the anticipated expenses, and there's a lot more information on our website.
So before we get to the live Q&A portion of today's webinar, we wanted to take a brief moment to review everything that we've covered today. So as you can kind of see here, the full agenda of topics that we covered today during today's webinar are listed. Be sure to keep these in mind as we move into the live Q&A to help you narrow down any questions you may have that we may not have necessarily covered in today's webinar. So that pretty much kind of covers the basics of the surrogacy journey, and a big thank you to Vicki, Jen, and Serena for hosting today's webinar. So at this point, we're going to take a look at some of the questions we've received from attendees. We only have about 10 minutes or so to get through these, and we may not be able to get to all of them, so please be sure to write down any questions you have and send them to us in an email, and we'd be happy to answer them. And again, if there's anything from the webinar you'd like to discuss in further detail, or if you would like to have a one-on-one consult with one of us, be sure to keep an eye out for today's follow-up email. So with that being said, let's get started with the questions. So the first question we received was, how do you match surrogates with intended parents?
Hi, it's Jen. So as we talked about a little earlier, both the surrogate and the intended parents are going to fill out a lengthy questionnaire that has a lot of information about yourselves, what you want in a surrogate, things like if you want a single embryo transfer or a double embryo transfer, what kind of communication you want throughout the journey. So we received both of these profiles, and that's the minute that we start matching. We start thinking about a specific surrogate for a specific intended parents through this tool that we use with this questionnaires. There's also, of course, some other things. We get to know each couple, each surrogate, but the first part of the matching process really comes with those 2 profiles.
So the next question is, how is WSS's surrogate screening process different from other agencies?
This is Vicki. I'm going to tackle this one. It's hard to say because we don't know exactly what other agencies are doing, but we do know that we have one of the most, if not the most, comprehensive screening processes of surrogates of anything that I've ever heard. And it's comprehensive to the extent that, for example, our background investigations are done by a licensed private investigator. Our psychological evaluations are done by licensed clinical psychologists. Our surrogates take a personality test that's administered by mental health professionals, either social workers or psychologists. We have a home check done, so just to the surrogates, we try not to be completely intrusive, but you can understand why the parents would be wanting to know a great deal about you and your home life and your family. And then, we also get to know the parents, and we have them go through a mental health session because we want to protect everyone, including the surrogates, and make sure that the journey is going to be a really positive one for everyone. So we have an amazing team of people here that's really on the money when it comes to doing the screening in a very thorough and comprehensive way.
Thank you, Vicki. So then the next question we received is, are there going to be more webinars? And the answer to that question is yes, definitely. After this webinar, we'll be sending out a follow-up email asking you what you would like to see in our upcoming webinars, and you can, let us know what you want us to cover in our future webinars, and just keep an eye out for that follow-up email. In terms of the next question, do surrogates work with a social worker throughout the process?
The surrogates are assigned a caseworker once they're matched. And this caseworker is going to be someone who follows and helps and supports the surrogate from the very beginning through the birth. She may not necessarily be a licensed social worker, but she's someone with a lot of experience, as such as Serena, who is been a surrogate 2 times. So not necessarily a social worker, but we do have 2 social workers on our staff at all times if there's any questions or anyone needs help from a social worker.
On to the next question. You highlighted base compensation. What would you say the average total compensation is?
Are we talking about surrogate compensation?
Yes.
Or unsurrogate compensation?
I'll jump in. If you were to go on our website, there is a package of compensation that you could look at to see what you could be entitled to, and I think that's the best place to go, because right now whatever I say would be very general, but I think it could be $50,000, $60,000. It could go up to those amounts based on everything that's included in the contract.
How is the process different for intended parents who don't live in the U.S.?
It's not really different at all. It's pretty much the same in terms of matching. We do a lot over email, over video chat, again, Skype, FaceTime. So we're connected with those, in Europe, the UK, wherever in the world you are. So it's not too different. I think because you're living there and we're here, sometimes there's a little more communication about the way things work in the U.S. But in general, the matching process is not really different between domestic clients and the U.S. international clients.
Will you help us connect with a fertility clinic?
This is Jen again. Yes, absolutely. We work with many fertility clinics all over the United States, from California to Oregon to Texas to Florida, up through the East Coast. So we will, if you want, we can give you a list of names of these clinics who our intended parents work with, and then I would suggest setting up consultations with these clinics and talking to the staff and the doctors there.
So I think that's about all the time we have for questions, but again, just keep an eye out for a follow-up email, and be sure to let us know what you want to see in future webinars, and you can always contact us to get in touch, and we're more than happy to have a private consultation with you to discuss anything we covered in today's webinar and your specific surrogacy journey. So thank you again, and we hope to see you on the next webinar.